What's up, 11D Lifers? Welcome to a brand new episode of 11D Life. And you guessed it, it is a solo button episode. These are quickly becoming one of my favorite episodes to do. I absolutely love music production and all the different things that go into crafting songs and writing songs and creating these moods and soundscapes and experiences for people. I'm super passionate about it, if you can't tell. I love being able to share that. I love being able to bounce ideas off of people, to share my ideas, to hear what your ideas are. That's one of the cool things about creative communities, and that's one of the cool things that I think is pretty rad about this podcast in particular. Hey, for everybody who is subscribing to 11D Life on iTunes or Stitcher or TuneIn or wherever you're getting your podcast, thank you so much for doing that. And hey, if you are looking for a deeper dive and a super friendly and fun community that sort of centers around all things 11D, you are in luck because we just created a brand new Facebook group for those of you who want to interact with each other. The 11D family and 11D fans are some of the kindest and funniest and weirdest people that I've ever met, and they make my life so much more fun to live, and you guys are all so much fun to create things for. So yeah, if you're just kind of wandering around life right now, don't really feel like you have a place, well, you have a band and you have a band fam, and you can find us all on the internet. And on this podcast. Check the show notes for today's episode for a direct link to get to this brand new Facebook group. Lots of fun ideas and super cool people are waiting there for you. If you're enjoying what you're hearing on the podcast right now, first of all, thank you so much for listening. Second of all, we try really hard to keep ads off of this podcast, and we do that by giving you guys really simple ways to be able to support what we're doing here. One of the quickest ways that you can do that is to follow us on Spotify. Follows are a huge deal for our band. It's a kindness that you can show that costs you no money and only 10 seconds of your time. There's a link to our Spotify in the show notes. Please check that out. Also, it will help you follow along with these solo button episodes. All of these songs that we're doing on these solo button episodes are found on our latest album, Rad Science, and you don't have to pay anything for it. You can just go to Spotify and download it for free. What a world we live in. If you are more of a tactile person and you think, I want to support this podcast in a more tangible way, I need something in my hands to prove that I did it, head over to our Rock Candy Recordings online store. There's tons of t-shirts and vinyl and CDs and other stuff on there. I don't know. I forgot what's on it. You go check it out. I'm just kidding. It's really cool stuff. And for everyone who places orders in our online store, we always throw in a bunch of fun stickers and packaged candy for you. So there you go. Today's episode is going to be for a song off of Rad Science called Inside Out. And this is hands down one of my favorite songs. Well, I say that about every single one of them. Who am I anymore? Inside Out is this super kind of moody, vibey, chill synthwave sort of a track. It was one of the songs that got us really excited creatively about what we might could do with 11D Live, possibly if there are some live shows in the future for us. And hey, if there are any producers, DJs, remixers, people that just want to be able to tinker around with these sounds and just completely chop up our album, or just want to be able to do your own thing, or you think, you know what, that's a pretty fun song, but I think I can make it better. Hey, I love that. And if there's any interest amongst the creatives and the musicians within this 11D community, and you would like access to the stems of this song, let me know, and I'll find a place on the internet and we will throw it up there and give you guys access to this stuff. This is one of the amazing things about being in a band in 2018. I hope that doesn't date this podcast in a few years. It's so easy to share songs and samples and sounds and open them up to have other artists do what they want to do with them. If you have a different idea for this song, a different vision for this song, and maybe you're just a guy like on your laptop sitting in your basement somewhere, and you're like, you know what, I would just really love to hear what these things sound like. I would love to be able to manipulate them, or just have that experience of diving in, seeing what these sessions look like in whatever, Pro Tools or Nuendo or whatever you're using as your DAW. Awesome, let's make it happen. So I have this session pulled up because I'm pretty sure that we're going to be doing a different remix or a reimagining of the song Inside Out for the new B-Sides EP that we have coming down the pipe sometime soon. I'll give you guys more details about that as we get them. So anyway, I'm getting long-winded. Let's go ahead and get into the show. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and play you the finalized album version of this track, Inside Out, so that you guys can hear what the final product sounded like, and then we will dive into it. So there you have it. That was Inside Out from our album Rad Science. So a lot of people have said, hey, Matt, this song kind of sounds a little bit like Stranger Things, or it reminds me of Stranger Things. Yeah, absolutely. There's there's a whole world of music out there that sounds kind of like the Stranger Things soundtrack. Stranger Things was reminiscent for me of a lot of the John Carpenter scores of the 80s. If you guys are familiar with that, you're probably too young to remember any of that. If you are a fan of 80s movies, chances are you've probably heard all of these synthesizer sounds happen in humanity before. As we dive into the intro, one of the things I want to kind of let everybody get a feel for is that this is a really, really simple sort of intro, that the idea behind it was just to sort of set a little bit of a creepy mood or a darker sort of vibe for the song. And one of the things I find so fascinating is the use of reverb as sort of its own instrument. So for instance, if I play you the synthesizer arpeggio that's happening without reverb, it sounds completely uninspiring. So I'm gonna grab that for you right now. Just kind of mute the reverb here and let you hear what this intro sounds like without the reverb. Just really, really simple. Awesome. And then adding the reverb in completely changes the vibe of everything. Kind of sounds like you're floating in a dream, or like you're just kind of falling away into madness. So then we kind of move from that into the vocals for the very first verse, and everything is sort of sparse. Not everything is firing at one time. And for those of you who've listened to the show before, you know that I'm a huge fan of layering vocals. When I'm looking at the session right now, there's about 6 different vocal tracks. So this is what the lead vocal sounds like in solo.
Where do you go? You're making me nervous.
And then add another layer over top of that, a double. Yeah. You can hear a little bit of headphone bleed in there. And this is with 3 of them, 4 of them, 5 of them, 6 of them. And then if we take all the reverb away, we end up with this.
And it soaks into my open wounds, the ones that never healed up right. When you hold me close.
Cool. So that's just sort of making all the vocals super naked, pressing the solo button on them. I wonder where we got the name for the show. One of the things that I have going on here in the vocals, in the verse as well, is that I committed these sort of vocal effects that are not the main reverb that's happening over top of the vocal, but just something that I sort of, would drop maybe a weird delay or a longer delay or something a little bit more dramatic in here to sort of fill the space. So when we head into this part of the song and we hit these vocals, so right after I say walking out, there's this other vocal effect that's happening underneath here that sounds like this. So it just kind of fills that space as we have a lot of sparseness happening. One of the reasons for kind of starting the song off really sparsely is really simple. It's just to give the song somewhere else to go. What we can do now is maybe solo what these drums sound like by themselves. So I actually had a bit of a hard time getting this kick drum exactly right. I'll let you guys hear what this sounds like, the kick drum and the clap that we have happening in the drum tracks. Here we go. Really simple. And then we also added a really big sounding snare over top of that in these areas, but it's not firing exactly with the claps. It's kind of firing in between them in a few places. Really big 80s snare. I love it. So this kick drum was a bit of a problem for us at the beginning. I'm not really sure why I ended up picking this specific kick drum because I've had to do so much work to get it to sit exactly right in the mix. But I'll play you this kick drum without any of the processing that we had on it, and I'll show you what it was and what it turned into. So here's what you hear on the album. And then if I take all the processing off of it, just kind of sounds a little lifeless. Like not as fun, not as punchy. It doesn't really vibe with the song as well. Yeah, the other cool thing about the rhythm parts in here, as we were talking about everything being sort of sparse, is that we have our kick, our clap, our big snare, but then we also have our hi-hats that are just kind of sporadically triggering throughout this intro. I'll play that for you. You hear this little hi-hat. Cool. And then I have this track called Clack, because I didn't know what else to call this. I don't know what this sample is, but it just sounded like a clack to me, so that's what I decided to call it. So when we have the kick, the clap, the big snare, the hi-hat, and the clack all working together, this is what we end up with. Yeah. And then we also have a tom down here as well. And I'll play that part for you here where the tom comes in. Oh man, I love that tom sound. Just big, boomy, deep, guttural. And now it's an all skate with the drums. And we're going somewhere. I love that. I love that. So much fun. Such a fun little rhythm track. So again, this is one of those instances where when you solo these tracks, it's kind of like, what's actually happening here? So like if we solo the hi-hat, like what is that? It just sounds like somebody's trying to start their car. It's not quite working or their battery is dead. And then with our clack sounds that we have down here, yeah, they're just randomly firing. Like they're definitely to grid. They're definitely within the rhythm of the song, but they don't really make sense by themselves. They need each other. So I really like this idea that there are all these different parts that are happening and they're all kind of trying to find their place. They're kind of mimicking what the songwriter is going through. They're trying to figure out what they're saying or what's going on, or to figure out something emotionally that they're going through. And in some way, you can sort of make, as cheesy or weird as it sounds, I kind of really love having the instruments do that as well. You know, we started out with this arpeggiator that's just kind of way out there in space. And then we have our drums that are kind of just peeking their head in the door saying, hey, can I join the party? What's going on in here? And then they slowly sort of start to figure out how they're working together. You know, they're moving between different time signatures, like moving between triplets and quarters and eighths and sixteenths. And then all of a sudden it's like, we use this fill to sort of make them realize, to kind of look at each other and realize like, oh yeah, we can do something fun together. And now we're having a conversation. So much fun. I love it. I love it so much. Yeah, so we've heard that soloed. We also have these high harmonies happening down here in this verse. So I'll solo these high harmonies for you so you can hear what's happening on this line.
Into mountain darkness,
So nasally. So elf choiry. And then over here.
soaks into my open wounds.
And then if we solo all of our vocals here, this is what they all sound like together with the leads and the harmonies.
I go walking out into mountain darkness, out into the night.
Cool. And then this next part.
And it soaks into my open wounds, the ones that never healed up.
I love big harmonies. I love fun harmonies. And look, there's so many different ways to harmonize with that melody. So I literally, as we're trying to figure out what the vocal production needs to look like, I'm just trying out every single harmony I can think of and throwing it in there, just singing it into a microphone, trying it out. And these are the ones that I ended up on. And normally the simpler harmony is normally the better call, or at least for me, because it sort of props up the melody and doesn't take away from it. So without the vocals, here's what our track is doing when we're heading into verse 1. This is just a really simple sort of a setup with some flourishes here and there. So we have our drums that are kind of filling into and out of our bars. One of my favorite things in this song are these little super, super fast arpeggiators that this track is called fast arps. Let's see if I can solo this for you. So that sounds really fun and almost like a dreamy, like you're getting lost in an arcade machine or something. And then this little guy. And again, just like when we were talking about at the top of the episode where we were just listening to that really simple, we have, without reverb, these guys are nothing. They sound so dumb without reverb. Okay, check this out. Oh, fun. Cool. Good for you. It's like a little robot cat begging for something. I'm not a cat person. That's why I need reverb. So yeah, we throw the reverb back on here and it actually kind of feels like maybe it's this weird dream machine happening in the song too. And it's like kind of reaching out with some sort of robot claw arm. Oh yeah. Ooh, I love it. One of my favorite things in this track that literally the entire track centers around is this bass line. And it is really simple. We are not rewriting history at all with this bass line or even this sound, but it's one of my go-to instruments. And it was specifically for this album. There were so many times that I'll pull up this virtual synthesizer. It's one of my favorites. It's just easy to dial up sounds. The sounds are like pretty simple, but they feel really powerful. The interface is really easy to use. And this one is called the Prophet 5, and it's actually made by a company called Arturia. So for anybody out there who can't afford actual, like real synthesizers, man, these instruments that Arturia makes are absolutely fantastic. And this is one of my favorites. I go to it almost every time I'm starting a track just because the filters feel really snappy. It just feels like a really commanding and powerful instrument. I love using it. Anyway, what am I talking about? So if anybody from Arturia is listening, man, what a great job you guys did on this bass line. So just eighth notes. And then we're kind of opening the filter up just a little bit so that bass sound doesn't feel static. So that it kind of gets interesting in between here. Open up a little bit and then kind of close down a little bit. And then we're going to open up one more time. So much fun. So here's what it sounds like in the track. And this is going into the pre-chorus. And again, we have everything dropping out here to let you know that something exciting is about to happen. I think a lot of times people forget that silence is also an instrument. So whenever you're creating dynamics in a song, you know, it's so easy to just kind of throw everything and the kitchen sink at a song and think, oh, this is going to be so great because there'll be so much happening at one time. And as Alex Watts said, it creates this amazing frenetic melee of noise. And that's not always the best approach. This is probably one of the more simpler songs in terms of production that we have on the album. It's primarily the whole song is this this drum kit, the bass line, and this arp. And you can do the whole song just with those three instruments. And that was kind of the challenge was, well, how do we just, having started out as a three-piece, you're always sort of figuring out how to make a song work with just those three musical elements. And obviously the voice, of course, but in terms of just the track, it's good to put limitations on yourself. It's good to force yourself to be creative within parameters. I feel like it's crippling to have every single option available to you during production. It causes you to be uncreative and just overwhelmed with decision making. Cool. In this area, we kind of have all of the drums drop out here. And then we have this Juno 106 happening down here in the bottom as soon as we get to that pre-chorus.
Can you feel me burn from the inside out, from the inside out?
God, I love that instrument. It sounds beautiful. Cool. And then it opens up into there. We're back to our ARP. Now, the ARP is playing something a little bit different. We kind of started out moving upwards with the arpeggiator moving upwards. And then that kind of lets you know that we're heading somewhere. And then once we've landed in a fun place, it's... And it kind of feels like that line feels a little more comfortable with where it is. It knows what it's doing. It's providing another hook within the song as well. We're also kind of entering into what would be, probably another pre-chorus. So we have like pre-chorus, and then a little bit more of the pre-chorus. It's just providing these different shifts to sort of prop up each other's melodies. Just feels kind of tough to me, like it knows what it is. The other thing that we have going on here is this vocal stem that I created, and it's basically the woes. So I don't know how many times I tracked myself, probably 10 to 12 times, and then created this vocal stem of all of that. And this is what this sounds like in the pre-chorus part. Here are these woes. Super drenched in reverb. Because they're kind of providing a whole nother hook. Like, come to think of it, there are lots of little hooky melodies in here. Maybe too many? I don't know. Only time will tell. Here's what this sounds like without reverb. Again, reverb is one of the primary instruments in this track, and many different parts are leaning into it, or sort of sinking back into it to find their place within the song. And there it is, naked. Just ass naked. Awesome. We also are starting to beef up the arpeggiator in this part of the song as well. So whereas what everyone has been hearing up until this point is this track, we're also adding another layer of that sounds a little more wooden. And maybe you don't hear it in the final version as much, but it's definitely propping up this hook that's happening, this really kind of choppy and muted sort of synth sound. So underneath it, that's the wood part. And then when I add the original Prophet in over top of it, they work really well together. It just feels... It's a really subtle change, but it's just beefy enough to let you know that something cool is happening. And then we also have the Juno doing another ARP down here. It's a little pluckier, a little snappier. So when I add the wood ARP in now, add something a little cooler, and then throwing the Prophet over top of that. Yeah, it just... Those three, I feel like, work really well together. That's a really subtle difference, but it's a way of adding this sort of tonal and timbral complexity to let you know that you're at a different part in the song. And it's not something that you might hear on the first listen, but on the second or third listen, you're definitely going to feel that there's something different happening. Or maybe I'm just a nerd and I'll just shut up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it makes me happy. So down here, when we start heading back into the final part of the chorus, or into the chorus actually, we have everything working together. So yeah, those vocals soloed sound a little bit like this.
Hold me close, can you feel me burn from the inside out, from the inside out? Will you look away or watch me turn from the inside out, from the inside out?
Cool, yeah. So it definitely feels more like an all skate, like we're all figuring out how to live together and be a family. One of my favorite tracks is the Juno sort of doing this really subtle muted thing underneath all of that. So I'll solo that for you here and just play this Juno pad. Oh my gosh, it feels like I'm watching Tron again for the first time. It's just so simple, but underneath everything that's happening in the chorus, I just love it. So much fun. And one of the things that is also really fun about this song is there's so many different noises just happening for the sake of noise. Part of that is a creative decision to sort of mimic how crazy and out of control the singer feels, or the lyricist of the song, which I guess would be me. All of these things sort of work together to convey this idea that there's an unhinging happening. Yep. So there's this little noise guy down here. He was really, really fun. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that I made that sound with this pedal called a Zvex Fuzz Factory, and there was literally nothing going into the pedal. I think I just turned it on and started cranking the settings, and it started to sort of self-oscillate. One of the really cool things about that pedal, it is fantastic for just making these otherworldly, monstrous sort of noises. And then we also have me sort of tweaking around on the sub-fatty synthesizer down here. Yeah, so this is one of my favorites. Oh my gosh. It just feels like you're charging up a laser gun or something. I'm a big fan of the laser guns. We also have these noises sort of happening here later on. I'll play the rest of the track here so we can get some context. So we're in verse 2 now. Awesome. So these noises happening down here are these guys. Yep, that sounds a lot like probably an analog synth run through a distortion pedal. And then we have the sub-fatty doing this really fun little whirly gig down here. Oh man, yeah. It just feels like kind of cracking a digital whip or something. And then it looks like I have the Juno track here doing a swell up. All of those elements come together to create this shift to let us know that, hey, we're heading back into a verse again. So in the track, they sound like... Cool. Yeah, so much fun. So much fun. So we have our ARP and our bass pretty much doing the same thing. One of the things we haven't soloed yet are these guitar parts, which the guitar parts are pretty subtle in this track. But once we get into verse 2... So it feels like business as usual, but then when we solo these guitars happening, really simple, just sort of harmonizing with each other. There's a left guitar and a right guitar, but they're not playing the same notes. They're actually creating what I think are fifths and fourths together. I'm not super awesome at musical terminology. I can find my way around a chord chart or a sheet, but there are definite gaps in my knowledge for what to call these things specifically. Kind of like if you were to walk into a doctor's office and instead of saying, I've got spinal herpetodoplus, you would be like, I hurt my knee. And they have a better name for that. I'm just the guy coming in saying, I hurt my knee. So anyway, that's so stupid. I'm so stupid. So we're into our second verse now, and one of the things that's going to be different about verse 2 than verse 1 is that, you probably guessed it, I'm adding in some more Juno 106 to kind of put some pads underneath these parts. So this is what that sounds like soloed. With everything. Just a really simple part, not a lot of movement. It's just propping up what's going on in the song.
Burn from the inside out, from the inside out. Will you look away or watch me turn from the inside out, from the inside out?
Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. We should solo that. So remember where we were doing the weird sort of vocal effects earlier on in the episode? Here's another one that I think I'm pretty proud of. Let me see if I can figure out how I made this one.
Inside out, from the inside out.
Oh man, that one just depresses me. When I hear it, it feels like somebody is sort of turning into a weird robot hybrid and then being sucked into the Matrix. Or like coming out of the Matrix or something. I don't know. Anyway, I love it. I'm pretty sure I made that with these two specific plugins. One of them is called Echo Boy, and the other one is called Little Alter Boy, and they're made by a company called Sound Toys. Sound Toys is amazing if you're producing music or even just goofing around on your laptop. Man, check out their plugins because they're so creative. I almost don't even view them as reverbs and delays and phasers and all the really cool things that they do. I view them as instruments because you have such control over manipulating the sound and creating these brand new sort of engaging and interesting sounds. And again, like this specific track, like it's not necessarily breaking new ground. It's not like the song's not going to win a Grammy because we have this effect in there, but gosh, it's so damn fun. Just
Inside out.
yeah, it's just super cool. It sounds like if the Mr. Thirsty straw that you have at the dentist were to turn into a person and come attack you. So anyway, Matt can be weird some other time. We have the rest of the episode to get on to.
Inside out.
So heading into this part, this will be the final chorus before we head into our bridge. And you guessed it, we're adding things. Can you hear what's different in this one compared to the other choruses that you've heard so far, or pre-choruses? Yeah, the guitar is kind of stepping out and saying, "Hey, I think I'd like to try a shot at this. I think I'd like to have the limelight for a second." So just a really simple line to sort of prop up what's happening in this last chorus, to let you know that something's happening, that we're building towards something. Here it is in the track with everything. I'll turn it up a little bit so you can hear. Yeah. So much fun. Then we have the guitar doing this. And then our pad. It's so much fun. So then we get to this spot, which is the bridge of the song. This is where everything just sort of falls apart. This is where lyrically we're going to retranslate what we've been talking about lyrically via just musical chaos. So the idea lyrically is that the songwriter or the singer is just kind of falling away into madness and trying to claw their way out of it. And we're expressing that with these different creative decisions that we're making within the instrumentation. But here, this turns into, you know what, all the demon hands are coming up out of the ground. The weird robot cat is coming back from the dead. The zombie unicorns are rising from the grave. And it's just going to turn into madness here. So we do that just by doing the caveman thing and making noise. So here's what the track sounds like with everything happening at one time, and then we'll dive into it. Cool. Yeah. So we haven't heard this drum beat yet in the song. We're just going straight on to 4 on the floor to almost like stress you out a little bit. Because up until now, we've been really chill. We've just kind of had this almost like hip hop sort of boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, boom, ka. And now we're just moving to, hey, it gives the illusion that the song is speeding up when we start throwing more kick drums in there and having a more steady 4 on the floor beat. So the way we get there is by noise. So I'm going to solo this noise for you so you can hear what's happening here. Yeah. So just noise. It's not always fitting in the key of the song. That certainly does not fit in the key of the song. It's really dissonant and weird and odd and doesn't feel like it's supposed to be there. And part of that is a creative decision to sort of keep stressing you out as a listener and let you know that like something unfriendly is upon us. And then we have these other noise tracks here happening underneath it. Just higher ones. Yeah, a little bit higher. A little more like trying to tune in to some AM station. Stranded on a desert island, trying to make contact. Love it. God, so much fun. And then this guy down here. This just sounds like a bunch of chopped up guitar delays. Oh man, so much fun. And then we have the sub fatty coming in. Just floating around in circuits. Hey, what's going on? And we're out. So all together we have these noises that just, oh yeah, something crazy is happening. Oh my God. It's like weird audio bomb explosions happening. So then we also have the guitar coming in and just being way more badass than it ever has been in the song up until this point. So they come in. A little more distortion, not as clean sounding. Just kicking open the door. We're here and we mean business. Bump these guitars up a little bit. Cool. So we're getting into the final seconds of the song, and this is where everything just kind of turns into a free-for-all. All the little tiny small decisions that we've made throughout the song all sort of culminate into these last 10 seconds of the track. So the drums change rhythm a little bit and go into what we would call halftime. So we're coming out of our 4 on the floor to And so it feels in this very last few seconds like all of the drums who were trying to figure out how they fit in and how they work together and can we make a fun beat together? Who knows? And they've figured out how to work together. And then at this very last one, they all sort of come together and they're like, you know what? Not only can we make a beat, we can add all of our weirdness and all of our weird sort of time signature-y stuff where we were finding our footing in the first few seconds of the song and use that together. We can create something even cooler out of our weirdness. We can not only work together, other, but we can elevate each other because of our weirdness. I love that. Nobody else in the world is thinking that when they're listening to this song. That might just be a Matt Langston thing, but I love it and I think it's fun. So all of the rhythm parts in this song are samples. The only live thing that I can tell is happening in here is I have a tambourine in the studio, and it makes it onto almost every single track that leaves Rock Candy. Here's what that sounds like. It kind of moves from doing this 4 on the floor tambourine beat to something a little more rhythmic. There we go. Cool. So I'm just going to solo these final vocals because we have a lot of different vocal things happening here.
When you hold me close, can you feel me burn from the inside out, from the inside out? Will you look away or watch me turn from the inside out?
Throw some verb in there. Cool. So I have these harmonies happening down here as well over top.
Hold me close, can you feel me burn? Look away or watch me turn.
Cool. So here's what those vocals sound like all together.
When you hold me close, can you feel me burn from the inside out, from the inside out? Will you look away or watch me turn from the inside out, from the inside out?
So they kind of move in and out of harmony with each other, which I think it's pretty fun. It's really cool because it feels like everybody's learning how to work together and how to try their best to pull themselves out of whatever madness this song is. So
Can you feel me burn from the inside out, from the inside out? Will you look away or watch me turn from the inside out, from the inside out?
So one of the ways that we elevate the final moments of this song is also adding in another pad. So you guys know that I'm a huge fan of those angelic pad sounds. I've talked about that ad nauseum, but here's what's happening towards the end of the song. With everything, this is where we are in the song. And we just kind of have this real sort of almost like in the final seconds of the song, we have hope sort of creeping in and letting us know that there might be a way out. And that's kind of the what the pad does there. Matt, you're overthinking it. I know. Shut up. So we also have this pad happening down here as well in the final few seconds. With everything, it's just a way of sort of toughening up and maybe giving like this finalized organ vibe to everything in the song. And then everything just sort of fades away into nothingness. So this is one of my favorite songs on the album. I'm so happy with how it turned out. Thank you guys so much for checking out this solo button episode of 11D Life. And thank you so much for listening through all of my weirdness and hearing me talk through my creative process and what all is happening in my mind as I'm trying to create these songs and these tracks. Hey, you have that as well. You have your own way of being creative. You have your own way of interpreting the world around you. And if you are a musician or maybe you're an amateur that's just getting into recording, or maybe you've recorded a bunch of stuff. Maybe you're a professional. I don't know. But your preference is your art. I'm literally just going through all of these different synthesizers and sounds and samples, and I'm just preferring something and putting it on the screen and just trying to make a beat out of it. I find that so cathartic and so fun. And I hope that in some way me sharing this process with you guys encourages you to keep doing what you're doing, to not be afraid to think about about music in terms of weirdness and in terms of conveying something emotional, in terms of conveying something that's important to you. And you know what? Not everything that I convey is important to the world. Sometimes it's just important to me, and I want to be able to share that. But that's one of the best parts about being in a band, is that we can share these creative processes together. So again, if anybody is interested in grabbing the stems for this song and then putting your own spin on it, or maybe you're like, Matt, maybe that song is like halfway cool, maybe it's not, but I think I could do a better job. I think I could do something more fun with it. Then absolutely, let's figure out a way to get you guys stems if that's something that you're interested in. A huge thank you to everybody who's making it to the ends of the episodes, I love being able to do this with you guys. And huge shout out to everybody who's joining the 11D Life Facebook group. You guys are amazing. You're the best. Yeah, if you liked what you heard on today's episode, tell somebody about the podcast. Let's grow the family. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you next week.